We went to Teaism. Have y'all ever heard of Teaism?
Yeah.
Yeah. We went there. We had more like a lunch. So I had, what I have, some Thai chicken curry, and my lady had some palak paneer. So yeah. So we had that. It was really nice.
Is it working, the sound?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, we go. Now that we know about breakfast.
Yeah, right, yeah.
All right, so hello again. I am Tatev, and we're meeting here at the Rhizome DC Tacoma Park location in June of 2021. Honored to be interviewing local artist and workshop facilitator Khalid Thompson, and we're going to discuss your story, and within that story find how you found Rhizome. So to kind of understand who you are and how you remember these things, let's begin at the beginning and tell me a little bit about your childhood, if you'd like. Who you were, where you were born, what were you like?
Goes way back to Richmond, Virginia.
Richmond, Virginia.
Yeah, Richmond, Virginia. That's where I'm originally from. And I moved here in 2005. So, but to go back further, I have to say, like, one of the seminal moments of my childhood, I'll kind of start from there, because I think this is what propelled me to become an artist. So when I was 7 years old, my father was incarcerated for the distribution of paraphernalia that was considered illegal at the time, that is now being legalized. And he was in federal prison for about 12, 13 years. So this happened when I was 7 years old. I have an older brother and a younger sister. And it was kind of like a crazy experience. Like, you know, law enforcement was at the house. Of course, my mother and my siblings didn't know what was going on. But and so that kind of, it didn't splinter the family, but it did fracture us in a way. And so my mother was, you know, kind of in a situation where she had to work like 2 jobs, and we became like latchkey kids, school, home, that kind of thing. So the family dynamic shifted, and that impacted me a great deal. So it kind of gave me a sense of existence being like, you never know what can happen. And through the process of having to grow up and grow through that, it allowed me to find like a deeper meaning and purpose in life, like for myself, because there's so many external circumstances that you can't control. So like a lot of my life has been like kind of dealing with the traumas from those experiences and kind of turning it and transforming it into something very powerful and universal. But we moved in for like, we were pretty much living like, I guess what you would typify as a middle class existence, and then it went to living in an apartment and my mom being gone all the time and the dynamics of my parents and some of the struggles that were there. But I still had a rich life. I gained new friends, you know, I had a lot of good experiences growing up as a kid, but I also had some struggles to kind of counter that. So I have to say, like, if I was to fast forward to high school, it was exposure to poetry that really changed my lens. I always kind of had like a knack for creativity, and I used to draw a lot as a kid. That was like one of my ways of like kind of not escaping reality, but just dealing with it. So, but I kind of was intermittent with drawing. Like I would come to it, I would go to other things. But my junior year in high school, I ran into a creative writing teacher, and she introduced me to poetry and creative writing. And I felt like for the first time, I mean, I was into eccentric things, but it was like typical kid, and that just transformed me. It made me feel like there was an avenue that I felt comfortable expressing myself in, where it felt like you could really have your own personal input on the execution of what you were doing, and you could affect people with that. So it had me like really get into like poetry and just the whole aspect of like creativity that was new to me. And that started me like thinking like, this is something that I feel connected to, like this desire to give. No, please.
No, please.
Oh yeah, this desire to give kind of myself, like feeling like, I guess early in life that I didn't have much control over my circumstances. This kind of gave me a sense that I could influence life in a way that could give me the positivity maybe that I was searching for. I think that's the major thrust behind what I do, is to try to generate positivity that I would like to see in the world. You know what I'm saying? Like in a sincere way.
I think that was sort of my question. I was interrupting you.
No.
Was, do you remember what kind of themes you wrote poetry about at this time?
Yeah, a lot of, at that time, like I was around 16, 17, and I was in a phase of where like I was questioning a lot of things. Like I was an average student in school. It's not so much that, you know, I couldn't have done well. It's just like the rigidity or some of the aspects of a school environment, it didn't really speak to my individual nature. I wasn't like rebellious in a sense. I just didn't really pursue work. But all of a sudden, when I was exposed to poetry and creative writing, those are things that just clicked with me. And I excelled kind of in those ways. But like a lot of my poetry was about just kind of trying to navigate the monotony of what I felt like school was for me, or life might have been at the time, and how can I like liberate myself from that. It was kind of like a soul searching began. You know, it started me on a spiritual path, a creative path of like trying to really ground myself in reality and heal through creativity. But a lot of it was rooted in like, you know, being a teenager and being rebellious against the system, you know? I was listening to like Rage Against the Machine, you know? And like Tribe Called Quest, you know? And like groups and artists, and I was listening to jazz. I've like always been a big fan of jazz, even since I was like a young kid. I think that's why I'm connected to as many jazz artists as I am. But yeah, like it was just always themed around that, you know, that kind of like youthful angst, but it felt valid because of some of the pain I had experienced. So, you know, it was centered around a lot of that at the time. You know?
What was the experience of living and growing up in Richmond, Virginia?
Wow. It was interesting. To say, you know, there was a lot of great things about it. You know, it's considered the capital of the South. It has a lot of significance in terms of like how this country came to be and some of the dynamics that we deal with socially in terms of like race and economics. So a lot of that's it's layered because it's kind of masked with this Southern hospitality. You know, everybody kind of gets along on the surface, but everybody kind of knows the overarching reality that's still in place. But at the same time, you know, it has a lot of Southern charm and creativity because it's a transit point, you know, where it is geographically, you know, right along 95, close to DC, not too far from New York, not too far south from Atlanta. So there's a cultural mix there. But, you know, growing up there, it's a smaller city. So if you're really fringe and different, especially if you're a person of color, there's not a lot of room within the population to like, you don't necessarily get embraced for that, you know? So, you know, growing up I was a nice guy, everybody liked me, but it was tough too because I was, you know, the butt of a lot of jokes because I was different. I was dressed like this, and it wasn't common growing up in Richmond to see people, especially black people, like, you know, showing our larger identity as a community, you know, because they're kind of rooted in the Bible Belt a little bit. It's the South, you know. So in one sense, it was very gratifying and cultural. In another sense, it felt kind of alienating. I think that's why I left, you know, because I wanted to go somewhere.
Where did you go?
Well, I moved to DC. You know, at the time I had met this woman who's now my ex-wife, but we had met back in 2003. I used to come up to DC all the time to party, to go to house parties and stuff like that, listen to a lot of house music. So I met my ex-wife here, and we ended up moving up here eventually. That's what got me to DC. But just coming up here a lot and loving the fact that it wasn't like a super huge metropolis like New York, but it had an international feel, a sense of vitality to it because of all the cultures that came.
Can you describe me like your DC of this time?
Oh, wow.
What were the parts?
Now we're talking about connecting the Rhizome and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Well, DC, the 2000s DC.
Oh, okay,
Welcome
cool.
here.
Okay, cool, great. So, well, when I moved here with my ex, like, I remember it was like the first time I had really been exposed to like bike courier work, like bike messengers in the city. And I was like, that's a perfect job for me. Like I was never a desk or an indoor type of person. Like I need like my autonomy, you know? So like I ended up talking to a few messengers I would just run into in the street, and then I got that gig, you know? Now that gig is an awesome gig, but it doesn't pay the most. So, you know, my ex at the time, she was intrigued by my lifestyle. You know, it was very artistic, very like, not so much concerned with money, concerned with just like being in the moment in life, and she had some different ambitions. But In terms of just the community, like I met a lot of amazing people through the Bike Messenger community, and that extended to artists and to a lot of the beautiful underground culture that is vibrant here in DC. It's kind of like bubbling under the surface. Like once you know places, like I've talked to people who don't know Rhizome exists. You know, like they're cool people, but they don't know. And I'm like, oh, it's a place you should definitely be plugged into. Yeah. But that's how DC is, you know? It's like when you know, it's like your whole world opens up to you, you know? So at that time, that was it. It was lots, that's when I was really seriously on my artistic discovery. And it's funny you say that because it was about 2005, I moved to DC. I was a bike messenger, I want to say about 6 months into it. And then my ex at the time introduced me to this artist. His name is Sharif Mamadou. He's from the Ivory Coast. He's a street painter. He plays on the street and shows his work in Columbia Heights a lot. You probably have met him. I mean, people have always said, I've seen that guy somewhere. He's out on the street all the time, sharing and selling his work. So she introduced me to him. And at the time I had been, you know, experimenting with like poetry and playing the guitar. You know, I wasn't focused on visual art, but meeting him really reignited that passion into me. And I remember we would like hang out and talk because he was working at this place called Caribou Coffee at the time. And
in DC?
Yeah, it was in DC. This is an older coffee spot that used to be here back in the day. And you know, I would see him downtown when I was working, like painting on the street, like after he got off work. Like he would just set up, and even in between his lunch breaks, like he would just have a canvas and he would just start painting with music. And I just remember looking at him and just being like, my goodness, he looks so free and so into it. Like, it just felt like the universe had kind of said, here's your way of connecting with, you know, reality of like having a space to be yourself. Like, this is your inspiration right here. So we became like really close. And that really helped ignite like my passion to draw again. And at the time, it was interesting because I was a bike messenger, and you feel free to cut me off whenever, you know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, definitely. I was a bike messenger at the time, and I was getting all this inspiration, but me and my partner at the time, you know, my wife, were kind of starting to grow apart. So there was this dynamic where I was getting all this creative fulfillment, but at the same time, like my partner and I were like not on the same page. So it was like enriching, but at the same time melancholic in a lot of ways, you know? Like, and I'm just doing the best I can to like, you know, try to be positive and get what I can out of life, because I feel like my path was so different than my family's and like what I was doing. You know, they're always like, get a job. Well, like get a job that's gonna pay you well. These things, like if you're gonna, you know, be an artist, you know, do it in some way that maybe reflects like certain standards, you know, in society in terms of like status and all that. And so for a long time, they didn't really understand like my direction in terms of like being an artist and kind of really committing to that, you know? So, and she was kind of along that line of thinking. I mean, don't get me wrong, they were supportive at all. It's just they had their own concerns and perspectives about the way I was going about it. Yeah. So kind of that thing. So, but anyway, long story short, so I met Sharif and I really got into drawing a lot that first year. And then I started to explore paint. This was around about 2006, 2007. And I'm completely self-taught. So I just started experimenting with it and not really knowing what I was doing. I started with oils and then I worked my way to acrylics eventually. And I found through color, and through what I was experiencing as a bike messenger. I think that's what plays a big role in my improvisation, is like being a bike messenger on the streets of DC, like you're always dealing with things in real time. And like the nature of my job was to always figure out how to improvise and get from point A to point B. And I was doing it in a very active way. I'm riding a bicycle through the city. You know, I also played sports in high school. You know, I do yoga, I do capoeira. So movement arts as well, that activity, like being expressive with the body, is very important to me. So I think that's why I love to do the live painting and the very gestural, abstract work, because it's like this form of like physical movement and release. So like, and just being amidst the courier scene and in the city all the time, and you know, from sun up to sundown, you're seeing all these energies. And like, if you look at my work, the layers, the depth to it, like the colors, there's all these intersections of colors and lines, and that's from just years of doing that. So it was a very, you know, energetic and fruitful time in the early years of DC, you know, because I was budding in my inspiration as an artist, and I was also living a very like a philosophy that was connected to my work, like improvised, like in the moment. Like it's not about getting the job that pays the best. It's about feeling what I'm doing, you know. And I just love the freedom of the job, you know. I really loved it. So those years were very they were very informative. I met a lot of wonderful people. I met a good friend of Rhizome's, Thomas Stanley, you know, at Sankofa off of Georgia Avenue. And during that period, this was like about a year after I had my son, but that's a little moving forward. But, you know, just the whole community and culture has always been vibrant and cool. So I think that really helped me, you know.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit, like what you were telling about DC. What, especially as a bike courier, you know the city inside out, yeah?
Certain some parts of it, yeah, for
How
sure.
many bones have you broken?
Oh God, thankfully I didn't break any bones, but I will say, yo, I did get in a few accidents. I only had 3 throughout my career. I did it for 13 years, and I'm not trying to say that one is enough, you know.
Yeah.
The 2 I did early in my career, like I literally, like within the first couple of months, because I had no idea what I was doing, you know. It was the eagerness to get the job done well, and you're kind of in the city, you're adjusting and adapting. But then what happened years later, after I left for a year and came back to DC, I ran into this poor guy. It was my fault too. That's the thing. Like we break the rules so much, you know, and the thing was
I've seen you cross red lights in DC.
Oh, I'm sure you have, you know. And see, the thing is, when you're out there regularly, you're in the groove. But I had just gotten back and had taken on the temperament that, like, excuse me, as if I had been out there for like, you know, 10 years and I had been gone for a year. So I ended up like hurting somebody rushing through a light. But that was a wake-up call. Like, that was a wake-up call, like, hey, you know, you're back out in these streets. Like, let your body catch up, let your, you know, situation get together. And then after that, I was cool. So, but I loved it. I mean, you know, I'm glad I'm done with it. You know, don't get me wrong. But, you know, it was some of the best years of my life.
What are some things that you've observed about the city? Some things that maybe others don't know? Some special Khalid reflections on DC? Changing DC, perhaps?
Oh, changing DC. You know, for me, I have to say there's a gold mine of like Black avant-garde creativity here. Just avant-garde in general, but there's a really rich Black abstract visual arts community like here, like artists such as Alma Thomas, Sam Gilliam, Felrath Hines. These are artists who were taking all the cultural information they were receiving and expressing it through abstract forms in very progressive and innovative ways that, you know, isn't mainstream press yet. And knowing, like, it's funny you say that because on my way to work, about the last 5-6 years I lived in DC, I lived in Brooklyn, and I would ride downtown to work, and I would ride through Howard University.
Yes.
And, you know, Howard University, a lot of, David Driscoll, a lot of well-known Black abstract artists came from that institution. And so I used to imagine when I would ride through it, like how I'm just picking up on all the osmosis, like I'm just soaking it all up, you know, like this past, this history that I'm riding through of DC and the cultural landscape of it, and the fact that I'm a primarily abstract artist and, you know, can connect and understand like some of their motives behind why they created the work. I just felt like a connection. I felt like that's something that's very richer, that's not often known about. And connecting with artists and connecting with people who were, you know, in that community, you know, was very special. So like artists like Sharif, I was telling you about, artists like, you know, musicians as well, like Luke Stewart, Aaron Martin, who, you know, recently passed, you know, who I miss very much. You know, he was in the city for so long, and I met him as a courier, as a bike courier. He worked at the, he worked in the mailroom at one of the big firms downtown, Squire Patton Boggs, for like decades. And he actually stayed in DC because his daughter Khadijah had been born. He's about to go to Amsterdam to live, to become a jazz musician full time. And I saw him playing on the street downtown when I was working, and we hit it off because of my affinity for jazz music, and formed a special bond. And he was like one of the first musicians to really experiment with me when it came to like doing live paintings, like him and Stewart.
Yeah.
So.
Do you remember how you how that idea was born?
It's very interesting you say that. For me, artists such as John Coltrane, Alice Coltrane, Sun Ra are huge. Jimi Hendrix, Bad Brains, they're huge. But I'll speak more to like Coltrane and jazz and improvised music. And something about dealing with the moment, like kind of like becoming a portal for like raw, pure, universal expression. Like, I'm not gonna put my ideas on it. I'm gonna become the idea of the moment. I'm gonna let the moment, this as an artist, no matter how you paint or how you create, there are moments where, you feel like something is just moving through you, and, your individual being is the filter that, creates your work, but it's from a universal source. So when I first was introduced to Coltrane in my early 20s, like I said, I had affinity for jazz music, but there was something about this philosophy of playing free in space and living in the moment. And I'm a fan of abstract expressionism, artists like Jackson Pollock, Franz Klein, Edward Clark, that deal with the energy of the moment and kind of becoming an extension of, like it's movement art, and letting spontaneity allow you to build something that can be a reflection of the moment that you were in. Coltrane to me embodied that spirit sonically, and artists like Jackson Pollock embodied it visually. And I was just so moved by those approaches. It felt like it was a way that I could finally tap into something supernatural but natural. Like a place where, because I think as a young child, you want to try to like make sense of what has happened if you experience a trauma of some kind. But your mind maybe can't really comprehend the weight of it, the complexity of it. So you develop maybe early on in life the desire to try to cope or deal with or heal from that. And not only art, but the way it's executed, the type of art I do is the catharsis. It is the link to me, for a long time in my own personal life, being awkward, being weird, being shy, being, it's taken me a lot to get to this point, to be able to express with some level of confidence what I feel and share that with the world. It's taken a lot for that. So what I do is backed by a sincerity of trying to really connect with this living universe, which I feel is very omniscient, very beyond our comprehension. And the way for me to tap into that possibly or have that relationship is through the work that I do and the way that I do it. And I feel like Train embodied that, and his wife Alice embodied that. Like art, Pharoah Sanders is another example, like where art and the expression of the moment is a prayer, a mantra, a way of validating that, of letting go, rather than trying to be in control, like letting the universe take control, and seeing the beauty that can come out of that, seeing the same level of awareness, like everything we're doing, the universe is constantly building moments, like all the time, you know what I'm saying?
So with that, something like this sounds so personal, and I know that you have brought workshops for all sorts of people of different ages, and I would like you to tell me a little bit about how do you take something like this of yourself connecting with some larger powers and being in the moment, and how do you teach something like this to other folks, and how your classes go? Tell me a little bit about your practice as an educator.
It is about allowing a space for people to tap into that experience, to get that moment where they can just freely channel. And the cool thing about it is like Rhizome was really open to that, because this is where I first started doing the workshops.
Oh, really?
Yeah, this is where
Do
I
you
first
remember
started.
your first workshop?
I do remember my
Tell
first
me about
workshop.
that.
Oh, that was crazy. Because like my partner, she was like, you should do workshops, you should do workshops. And I'm like, I don't know, like people think I was weird, Look, here I am, this painter kind of doing my own weird little thing, like what do people really think of that,
Yeah.
So, but she just continued to encourage me and I was like, yeah, I'll give it a shot. So I remember the first time I did it, I was nervous, but it went over really well. I realized that there are people that want to experience that like, like you're in your own life, in your own world sometimes. So it can sometimes feel like everybody may have access to what you're feeling, but it's not true. And I think what surprised me about the workshop is that people wanted to come and be in a place amongst others where they could express themselves freely in this way, like whether they had experience as an artist or not. And I knew at that moment that like, whatever it is I'm trying to transmit, people are responding, or whatever is being transmitted through me, people are responding to it. The concept came from like, doing the live paintings and sometimes just feeling the energy of people like in their kind of like wonderment. I just mean like more, or curiosity, like this is an interesting way to do something. What's happening, what's gonna come of it, And I think seeing that in me and seeing that I'm dealing with risk and taking chance in the moment, for anybody, just like I saw it, it can be inspirational. So I thought, well, let me see if I can share this with people and if they would, take it to heart. And so the first class was awesome. I usually just start people with some free drawing exercises that are kind of timed, like 10, 30 seconds, a minute. And it's more just to be like, hit the ground running, whether it's fast or slow, whatever, you can scribble, you can doodle, just don't think, just go. And that seems to get people loosened up to like, okay, instead of just say, here, draw. It's like, okay, and then of course I have my music on, I have my Alice Coltrane, I have all that going in the background. I introduced the whole concept to them. They already know, they've come to the workshop, so that's also the cool thing about it is people come to it with looking for it in a way, most of the participants. But after I do about 3 or 4 of those timed exercises, I ask everybody how they feel, and they're like, this is really relaxing and meditative. And I said, look, we'll take all your utensils now and just create. It does not matter what you create, just let it flow, be in the process. If that means you gotta stop, reflect, get back, get up for a second, go have a smoke, I don't know. But this is your process now, and at the end, we'll share our experiences. And people, it's funny because it'd be like people that will come and be like, I never draw. And they're just like pouring their heart out on the paper for the whole time. And so it's just about giving them that moment. Like they might not draw after that. They might leave like, oh, I'm gonna draw every day, and then life takes them back to where they go. But I say just take that philosophy and apply it to your own life in your own way, Like be in the moment with yourself. Know that like no matter how you navigate life, you have the autonomy of who you are to make decisions for yourself, to try to navigate life the best way you can, and allow your inner creativity, the essence of who you are to play a factor in that, in whatever life you live. That's what I'm really sharing with them. It's about art, but it is far more about being, like really being connected to the vitality of the universal cycles of life, death, inhale, exhale, just the whole process.
Would you be able to think who is reacting how to these workshops? Like there are younger children and older folks. Is there like what is the difference there?
What I find is crazy. Like it's like we're all children in a sense. You know what I'm saying? Because like the level of enthusiasm of the adults is just like the kids. We expect it from kids, right? We know kids, like if I give my son, some colored pencils or something, he just will start drawing, But for adults and for teenagers and some older kids, you know, they don't often get to do that. But when I see them in these spaces, and it's like, it's just it's so interesting, because it's like literally, it's like they want to be told or given permission to do this, to create. They come to this space like, I don't feel like I can get this anywhere in my life, but here, I'm going to allow this person to basically encourage me to not be afraid and to just, because this is a safe space, it's just paper. You know, like, you don't have to make, you know, it's just for you. You know, once you do it, you can roll it up, you can do it, maybe you can share it with friends, you can hang it, who knows, but it's your space. And, you know, you can't possibly be harming anybody in that space, you know, it's hopefully not, you know, I'm hoping that the material that is inspired is something that brings out positivity, you know, but I can understand if, I'd almost rather have somebody who may have a lot of negative vibes still doing that practice, because I feel that you gotta use it as, it's a channeling point. You can channel with it, you know? You gotta allow that energy, but at least it's a space where it's not directly, you know, having a physical harm on somebody. But depending, I'm for drawing as long as it's about getting something out in the process of healing. So I don't wanna make it sound like it's just okay to create negative images that offend people. Absolutely. You know what I'm saying? Like, the goal is to try to heal, you know, inevitably with the process that I'm doing, because it allows me to heal through gaining confidence. Like this experience gives me confidence. You know, I used to have visions before I even really knew I was an artist of wanting to express myself in this way. And it's kind of, you know, amazing that I'm doing that. And it's even more amazing that there are people that connect to it. Yeah. I think that's the thing that is most beautiful and most fulfilling about it, and letting me know that, like, I am on the grounded path with what I'm doing, because there are people that appreciate the process of the act.
Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit about the live painting to music? Maybe some stories, some situations. Perhaps you can just start with the painting behind you. How about that? You can tell other stories also. Like, but this happened literally like last week here at Rhizome.
Last Thursday, right? Last Thursday at Rhizome. Yeah. This painting was inspired by my experience with the amazing band, Irreversible Entanglements. Yeah. Luke Stewart, the bassist of the band, invited me out to perform with them. They're on tour and they are stopping through DC. And, I said I would be honored to come and live paint. You know, we've collaborated in the past. We've performed here at Rhizome before.
You've live painted with Luke before?
Yes, oh yeah. Actually, it's funny because Luke and Layne, like my very first experience, because I met Aaron around the same time, but my very first was with Luke and Layne.
Oh, nice.
You know, it was with Luke and Layne back at the New York space. I don't know if you remember, like, Union Arts, yeah. So I had got with them, and we had been hanging out, and I had met Luke through Aaron, and we were talking about art and painting, and they saw what I do, and we started working together. But this one, it's kind of like a culmination of that, because that was years ago. That's been a while. I mean, it's been quite a while. So when he called me back, it was like, I have such a respect for that group and the energy that they bring. And
what about that group?
Just the pureness of expression. Like, there's a certain level.
Mother is incredible with words.
I mean, she's an embodiment vocally of the essence of the group, and her vocalization really pushed me. And the energy that she brings really, it reverberates. It's
intense.
It's intense. So I picked up on it, and I was telling her that after the performance, after we had talked some days afterwards, like, you know, your energy really, you know, was channeling through me in the performance, the band as a whole, and they really are a great combination of just energy and spirit. So I was really honored that they reached out to me about the project, and felt so excited when all the people showed up, and it's just the electricity in the air, the anticipation of being able to work with a band I respect, and knowing that their music is going to be in some sense a porthole for me to explore the moment and share that experience with everybody in attendance, including the band. So I was beyond excited, as you could probably tell.
Yeah. I mean, you were in it.
Yeah.
You were in a whole another dimension yourself.
Yeah. You just try to go with the flow.
Yeah.
And I want people to see that. I want them to see the deeper connections between color and sound. You know, our eyes and our ears are pretty much at the same level. And it's not about making color sound or sound color. It's just showing a deepening relationship between creative disciplines. How there's an undercurrent of oneness that takes place, you know, and we can have relationships that can, in performances where you can really start to see a synergy take place. And that, you know, being in that space on the canvas and vibing with them, and a lot of the times the musicians I work with really get it, they really understand it. You know, they're so in tune with playing vibration and moving with vibration that to them, when they see me painting, they notice exactly that it's a strong similarity between what they do and what I'm doing. And
how was it playing with them outside?
it was amazing. It was, I mean, the night couldn't have been better. It stopped raining like right at the perfect time. Everybody started showing up. It was great to see you. I mean, I was like, oh, because we were doing this, and it's just like I admire you and respect you so much as an artist. So it was like, you know, it was really great to see you. That just like, it was like, cool. Now the energy's about to be official. Now we're about to go into this thing. So, so it was fantastic, and I just wanted to convey the intensity, the sincerity of the moment, and put everything on the line, and hopefully create an image that was compelling enough to encapsulate the mood in the moment.
Do you remember where the gold comes in?
Like, yeah, more towards the end, and it's just like a great play on light, you know? It's just a great play on light, you know? And trying to just add different elements when light is, you know, shining on it from whatever angle. And just starting from this yellow area here, I kind of worked my way out, and I just allow the tempo and the rhythm, you know. My style has changed over the years in terms of live painting. So, whereas I used to kind of be a really medium heavy, you know, I was using more palette knife stuff. Like, I've gotten more like to where like, and I used to fill up the canvas a lot. Like now it's more about negative space, and it's just about accenting, like marks and colors that intersect to kind of like, which I think is like an embodiment of like jazz, because like jazz is like a lot of accents, you know, in terms of like when you're playing and you're doing your notes. So it's like a constant interplay, color and marking interplay I'm trying to create, you know, that hopefully feels like it has a strong relationship to the music that's being played, you know. Because it is about, for me, like abstract painting is like, and just abstract art in general, like avant-garde art, like it has a special place for me because I think it takes a tremendous amount of courage to express something that's sincere, that doesn't fall along the lines of like what's typified as like aesthetic rhythms and visual and sonic soundscapes or visual, you know, scapes. And to kind of say, hey, like we can take that and we can make something else, you know, from it. But you can if you don't experiment. You can if you don't take risks. You can if you don't take the order or the structure and completely obliterate it and use what's there to build something else. So I think that's the power of that kind of art, is that it's not I don't think it's like antagonistic, like we're gonna do something different just because everybody's doing this. It's an expression of nature. You know, nature's about change, and you know, it's about movement, so it's never going to just be one thing, you know? So there will be some of us who will be called, for whatever reason, to express other aspects of reality, and hopefully open and expose others to more expansive possibilities and what your reality can be, because it took a tremendous amount of courage for artists who came before me to go through what they went through, so that I could be inspired to say, well, I'm going to paint something that speaks to my emotions and is visually representative of that. You know, it's going to be abstract, it's going to be pure color, pure movement, and I'm going to do my best to try to transmit that feeling to the viewer. You know, to like get them to feel the impact of what's going on, you know. So, you know, it's it's amazing thing, you know. I think and so that's what's helped me. It's like I have this need, I got to do it. So here I am, you know, here I'm doing it, and very grateful to have artists and community that support and encourage it. That's huge, you know, that's huge.
We'll talk about the community and Rhizome. Did you want to change the? Frame? Oh, it is wonderful. The interview was so wonderful.
Yeah.
We're good. Okay, so we can go back to that. We were talking about the community here.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about the community of Rhizome. You said you had your first workshop here. Tell me about how you got involved with this community.
I got involved with it through Aaron Martin, the late Aaron Martin, late great Aaron Martin. Love to his wonderful daughter Khadijah. I hope she's doing well. And through Luke Stewart. So they performed here, and I met Layne, and I met, you know, some of the other heads at Rhizome, and I told them about what I do and how I do live paintings, and they were totally open and supportive. So I've been coming throughout the years, listening and watching performances, viewing some of the art shows, and you know, I just really love this space.
What about it?
The fact that I was funny, I was telling Layne, but it's like the fact that they encourage, like, I don't like using token words like fringe or like, you know, anything like that, but I'll say avant-garde or creative paths that may not have platforms in other areas because, you know, it has to be PC, it has to look and appear a certain way, whereas I feel like Rhizome is a healthy space for creatives that want to get together with like-minded creatives and create some pretty out there art, you know, like, and it literally, like, because Layne had reached out to me about the workshop. He's like, I want you to do like a workshop, man, but I'm not sure, like, you can come up with it. And I was like, okay, well, what would I do? Because, you know, like, what would I figure out? And then my lady's like, well, just do a workshop of what you do. And I was like, okay, that makes sense. So I came up with the whole painting the moment thing. But just over the years, like working with Thomas here, working with Luke here, working with Jamal Moore, working with Aaron, doing the workshops, they've just really been supportive of my style and approach to art, which is very free and open. And they just like encourage that kind of vibe here. And I just feel it. And this house is very special to me. You know, it's like, I think it is for all of us that have been a part of the community and been coming here for years, you know. This house is such a special place. This is one of the places where I felt like as an artist and as a human being, like I could be free, you know? Like,
what do you think? Why do you think that is? What about this space or this community?
The people that are artists here, the people that run the space, and the community that supports it are all very progressive in terms of the content that they want to see, in terms of they're a community. There's a community here that wants to see people stepping outside of the boundaries of what's acceptable, and they're encouraging of that. So I think that makes it a special space for artists that need that need a community to support them and need places to express themselves and feel free. You just, as soon as you come here, and then also just the acts and the artists that are invited to perform here and to do shows here, and the content that comes from that, you know, it's a rich diversity of content that's not readily available to the public, and art that doesn't have to have this commercial-esque appeal. You know, it's not a commercially driven art space. They are very community oriented and very community supportive and very sincere and very kind, the space, you know. Like,
how would you describe the house itself to someone who's never been here?
Wow, that's interesting that you say that. How would I describe it? I would say that this house is like a bed and breakfast for weirdos. You know what I'm saying? Like it's like a bed and breakfast like for weirdos. You know what I'm saying? It's like a place where you can like kind of drop in and like just kind of vibe with like creative people who will get you. I think more than even in other creative circles. I feel like there's a lot of chance takers here. People who aren't looking for the norm, but I'm not saying they don't appreciate the norm. I just think there are people here that have a broader appreciation for artistic expression.
Yeah.
And that's not to condescend, it's just to say like we can appreciate what's out there in the norm, but we also see the value in what's even more possible. And we don't see a difference in the valuation of that. We see it as a continuity. So it's good to know that you can run into like-minded people like that here.
Yeah.
And this space is special, and the community that supports it is too.
How do you feel about the fact that the house will be physically displaced into the corner lot?
Yeah, that is interesting. It's a sign of the overarching realities of particular interest in the world when it comes to economics and how in our world, the natural world, that's what humans use to kind of, I'll be honest, like invade other people's lives and communities with possibly little to no regard. They don't really are concerned about the heartbeat of the community, the local community, and what these spaces mean. And not even what these spaces mean to the communities that have been here, but the ones that are also developing around it, and it's just another sign of which is what you see, at least here in certain areas of the country, where it's just like this continual, like, how can I say it? This continual kind of just like aloofness when it comes to like creativity and art and like the quality of what creative expression is, and like even like this country, like what creative expression has done for this country in terms of the music and art that this country has produced, but at the same time having a system that's adverse to that because it just wants to produce workers, that can enrich certain resource and wealth interest, And so in ways of like when it comes to real estate development, art like spaces like Rhizome that are really here are always going to be, looked at and targeted, because I do think there are intentions to muzzle, muffle, distort the sincere creativity or creative expressions of communities that when those creative agendas aren't tied to capitalism or aren't tied to making a lot of money or kind of, how can I say, it's abating the sincerity of the artistic expression, which means like diluting it, they don't want those communities to have influence because then it may cause human beings to look more inwardly for their value or to be able to find value in their present life rather than striving for the material trappings or the social trappings that we equate with like the highest values of life. They so this is a prime example of that. Otherwise they would probably say, hey, we can try to keep this space here, but it's like, oh no, with the encroaching gentrification, this is what happens. But change is part of life.
It is.
And I think Rhizome is a spirit more than it is a place. It's places everywhere and nowhere. So wherever the people of the community move to, that's where Rhizome will really be.
What takes to unite that spirit of the community, you think?
I think the willingness of the people to definitely understand that Rhizome is the people.
Yeah.
It's the people that come here, it's the artists that perform and create work here, it's the organizers, it's the staff, that wherever that community gathers, that's where Rhizome will really be. This is just a place that housed it, and this energy will always permeate here, whether people know it or not. The essence, the events, the things that have gone on here are always here. But you know, in terms of the physical reality, it'll just be a different space. And that can be looked at in a positive light, because what's most important but to keep that spirit alive.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? To keep that connection to the creativity and to keep the community connected. So it's the willingness of the people to keep Rhizome alive. And I don't think I'm sure that's going to happen.
Yeah.
You know, it's just too strong of a vibe, you know.
And as we expand that concept of the community, I'm wondering about what your hopes and dreams are of the future for Rhizome. Maybe some things that could change. What could change? How can we make it more inclusive and safe?
Right. I think the mission of Rhizome and the way it acts on this mission is very evident. I think there's always new and innovative ways to bring in, you know, other communities. And I think from what I see, I feel like Rhizome's doing a great job. Let me be honest. Let me just continue to do what Rhizome is doing. You know, just continue to do that. You know, I think in everything it'll bring in the energies. You know, like it's the intention, right? It's the spirit, right? So if they keep the spirit, then the energy and the people will continue to come, and it will only expand. So because I was able to come here and get a lot from the space as an artist, and feel like a certain level of completion when I came and experienced the community, I feel like Rhizome is already doing exactly what it needs to be doing. You know.
How has your time being involved with this community in and outside of Rhizome shaped you as an artist and as an individual?
It's given me the confidence to really stay true to the pulse of my creative expression, to understand that it's valued and that the community not only values it, but they feel they need it from me, just like I feel like, you know, I need what I get from them, you know? And I think that's the essence of it, you know, is that there's that natural support for what I do. There's a natural value. So recognizing that makes me feel here in the world, playing a positive impact and a positive role, direct role in my community, which hopefully is making the universe that much more positive.
Really,
you know what I'm saying? If I can just add a plus, if I could be the plus, you know what I'm saying?
That's like the
positive
adult, realistic vision, you know?
Yeah.
We're not trying to change the
world.
world.
The world has changed. Yeah. Just like, hey, I'm here on this blip on the screen. I gotta, you know, as I move on this arc, I have a choice. Well, how much time do I have? And I don't know, but what can I do with the time I have? And I feel like, you know, Rhizome is evidence of people making choices with their time on Earth, like other wonderful spaces, you know, dealing with art and experimental art. And that's what we got to do. So communities like this make me feel like, well, yeah, there are people out here that need this, like me too. So I got to be a part of that.
Cool.
Yeah.
I think that's good for me. Is there something that you would like to add that maybe I didn't touch upon?
Oh, no. I'd say I just want to thank Rhizome. I want to thank this space, this house, and all the artists involved over the years for making this a place where an artist like myself can come and share my very wild, out there vision of what art is, right? But like champion it and like give me even more confidence. It's not easy being an artist all the time, just like it's not easy being human all the time. So when you get that feedback from a community, you realize like, hey, you're valid, you know, and Rhizome gives me that sense of validity. And I can take that out into the world and help to create communities wherever I am.
Yeah.
So it's a vibe here.
It is.
For sure.
Just like the stuff behind you.
Yeah, thank you. And that was made here, and I'm always honored. And that one hanging in the hallway there was also made here with Thomas. I was about like 3 years ago, 4 years ago.
Yeah,
so
and we're gonna have another one made on July 3rd.
You know, so I'm really excited about
Me
that.
too.
You know,
that whole celebration is gonna be wonderful.
Yeah, I can't wait. Thank you for reaching out and making me a part of it.
Of
you know, I'm
course,
very
you
grateful.
are a part of it.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
All right.
I really do.
I think we're good, Mike.
All right, cool, awesome.